This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, number 736, brought to you by iFanboy listeners just like you who are washing their hands, wearing their masks, thinking about other people, getting by. That's what we're doing. Hey, welcome to iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 736. Previously, I had 735 script up, but I fixed that now, and you didn't have to hear it. Oh, crap, you just did. I'm Josh Flanagan. This is my co-host, Conor Kilpatrick.
Good morning.
Who caught that I was on the wrong episode previously. And with us today is Dr. Ryan Haupt.
Yeah, when it's all business talk, you bring in old Jimmy comicbook.com business. When it's sex scandals in the comic industry, I'm right here. I'm here to help. Hi, what do you need?
Well, we bumped him. like Carson, we bumped him. We had him on. No, we literally, there was no reason to bring Ryan back in other than the fact that we missed having Ryan on. So that's why you're here.
Yeah, I miss talking to you guys. I'm excited to be here.
All right. We are iFanboy. Every week, we read our stack of comics. One of us picks the one they like best. They call that the pick of the week. We talk about that book. We talk about other books from the week. We talk about the patron pick. We'll get some mail if we can. It is a rollicking, stomping good time. Probably not stomping. Let's be, there was a bird earlier. It might come back.
It went away. I'm really sad. It was really soothing, but oh well.
We all felt I was focusing on my breath. Here's your spoiler warning. There will be spoilers. There were some books. Conor, you had the pick. I had like a regular week of reading.
Yeah, well, Marvel only their trades came out and then a couple of digital only books.
Yeah.
DC put a whole lot of books out. It's funny because people were surprised how quickly the pick went up, but now that we have DC on Tuesday, if Marvel doesn't put anything out, and Image only put a couple things out, there's no reason why the pick's not going to come out earlier. This whole Tuesday, Wednesday thing is still throwing me off.
Yeah. Anyway,
the pick of the week is Strange Adventures number 2 from Tom King, Mitch Gerrits, Evan Doc Shaner, and Clayton Cowles. And this wasn't the pick until I read it, which it sounds strange, but I had a book all lined up. It's just that I read this book last. And so I had a book all ready to go, and I was like, oh man, that was terrific. This is so great. And then I read Strange Adventures, and I was like, oh, fuck, it's this. This is part 2 of the Adam Strange story from Black Label. 3 of the last 4 picks have been Black Label books. And some people said, yeah, of course you picked this book, but the thing is, we didn't pick the first one, and we weren't sure about it, if you go back and listen to the conversation. Because the first one was very, very sort of introductory. You wasn't sure what the story was going to be. And I actually went back and I had to read 1 and 2 because it's been so long since the last time this came out. I had forgotten about Mr. Terrific because it's been so long.
Right.
So reading 1 and 2 back to back, it's a cliche, but it's a really well structured, this particular issue of Strange Adventures, in which Mr. Terrific has been tasked by Batman to investigate Adam Strange's story about being the hero of Ron and the war he fought there. As of the first issue, we are interspersing the events of Adam Strange's best-selling book about his adventures on Ron, drawn by Doc Shaner, and then the real life, drawn by Mitch Gerrits, in which Mr. Terrific is deciding whether or not he's going to investigate Adam Strange. And there's a device. Tom King must have just watched Star Trek 4, because this is the device of Star Trek 4 in which the computer is constantly quizzing Mr. Terrific and says, correct, every time he's correct. I just loved the back and forth between the wild adventures of Adam Strange on the planet and then Mr. Terrific going through his life while being quizzed while deciding to investigate Adam Strange, and then at the end they come together. This was terrific. The art was unbelievable. By the end of it, this was head and shoulders above every other comic this week, which was a good week of comics. I thought it was incredibly well structured, and it's no surprise Mitch Gerrits and Doc Shaner are 2 of the best artists working in comics, 2 completely different styles, and the way they work together here is wonderful.
I mean, yes, everything you said. I mean, it really, and it's funny because I think that this is one of those books where there's a book where one person is doing the heavy lifting. Like, this book is great because the writer has put together an amazing script and story, and he's got some artists. I really feel like this is one of those sum of its parts things where, like, Tom King did a good job on the thing, or maybe great. We don't know yet. Like, he's doing a great job, but then, you've got Mitch coming in with this one style that, by the way, if I looked at this, I know Mitch. I know his work. I've known him for a long time. I don't think I would tell you right away that's Mitch Gerrits. He's really pushing himself to sort of do something a little unique for it. And then, I got to the first Doc Shaner page, and I was like, oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, like, we've spent a long time talking about how, he should be bigger than he is.
Should be a huge star, yeah.
And this felt like validation of that. I was like, I wasn't wrong. Like, I'm not wrong. Look at this. You know, it's insane. So then, you know, you've got at the same time, it did take me a little bit, and I guess had more to do with time than anything else, to sort of like, where am I? What are we doing? You know, the idea that he's talking to Batman took me a second.
That's why I had to go back and reread, because it's just it had been, you know, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
A book like this, you need the details, and so I made a point to read them both together, just because it wouldn't have had the impact without having gone back and read it.
That's a good call. Well, I read it, and it had an impact. Yours might have had more of an impact, and I'm sure it did. But, you know, once I sort of got back into place, and also I had read this right after I read another book, which I really didn't like. And it was just like, it was like a warming, soothing tonic. I was like, oh, yes, that's the way to go.
I'll also say that, you know, we've been fans of Mr. Terrific since the JSA books, you know.
Yeah.
It's been, I don't know how many years. This is a fucking cool as shit, Mr. Terrific.
Yeah.
It's totally true.
I mean, this is like the best version of Mr. Terrific. You know, we see all of his skill sets. We see him doing intellectual stuff. We see him boxing and shooting and laying sexually in bed while he reads books. And, you know, when he was revealed to be the big supporting character or co-lead, as they've been saying, at first I was like, oh, Mr. Terrific, interesting. But now I'm like, yes, this is what I want from these kind of books, is to take these characters who aren't starring in other works and really make them the big deal.
Well, he's always been one of those characters who I've really liked a lot, but I don't feel like I've read a lot of stories that served that. Like, there's a lot of possibility there, and it feels like, you know, I mean, I don't think Tom King's tastes and likes in comics are very different from sort of the stuff that we do. The very fact that, you know, like, he's doing an Adam Strange book, and we're like, yes, perfect. But then he went and found this other character who also has been underserved in modern comics. We'll put it that way. You know, where like there just seems like there's a lot more there, and if only somebody would sort of take the time with him and do the right thing. Same with Adam Strange. You know, it's hard because right now, Mr. Terrific is kind of the protagonist, and
yes.
You know, Adam Strange is the wild card. Like, well, is there something afoot? Now, I'm assuming that's not going to be the case, but we don't know right now, so that's also interesting. Ryan, you can talk sometime too. I'm sorry.
No, I've been enjoying the discussion. It's, you know, sometimes I forget that I'm not just listening to the episode on Sunday.
Fair enough.
I mean, this is just fantastic. Yeah, I completely agree with this being the pick, except for one other book that we're going to talk about later.
Oh no!
When the Silver Age is done by Doc Shaner, it sings. It's so good.
Yes.
I can't get past it. And the page where Mr. Terrific, like, apparently he just puts on his mask with like a paste, and that page was super cool. And then like the T-Sphere is just floating around, questioning him all the time, asking him different stuff.
Correct.
Until he finally asked to be stumped. That was a heartbreaker.
Well, you know what? If I may.
Yeah.
He was just asking him trivia questions. There was no cognitive stuff, so I was a little like, all right, make him do a little math. Make him work. I think it was one math question, but it was mostly just like, who said this?
It was like the history of math. It wasn't even a math question.
Maybe he doesn't like math. That's fine.
Well, I'm saying, well, then he should work on it.
Flex that muscle.
What's fun about this also is that, again, the idea of this series seems to be that what is truth and what happens in war, as this is, you know, all of Tom King's works eventually become about. But the thing is, the Adam Strange part's super fun and awesome. We're experiencing his book, and in this story, they were driven out of the main city of Ron in the first issue, so now they're sort of refugees in the desert, and he has to go broker peace with the wild clan in the desert, who was traditionally the enemies of the people in the city, to help fight off the Picts, who were the enemy in the first issue. And it all goes awry. That part was an exciting, fun, Silver Age-y Adam Strange story.
I really like the device of his beard getting longer. I was like, oh, he's been out there a while.
Right.
You know, and I didn't realize it at first. I had to sort of flip back and I say, oh, yeah, his beard's growing there after he kills the bug and drinks the bug's blood.
And what's great about this is they don't shy away from the Silver Age-ness of it. He's wearing the classic costume. He has the little pew-pew-pew laser gun. It's not any attempt to modernize and make it cool. What was cool about it, what were those elements of it?
Well, he's wearing the classic costume, but then he gets the classic costume, but for desert gear. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's good.
It's like Desert Batman.
Yeah.
Adam Strange of Arabia.
The thing is, like, if that was the book on its own, I think we'd all probably really like it. But then they're like, but wait, you get that book plus this special offer.
Yes.
You know, it's like the best late night infomercial comic book. It's quite a special thing because the thing is, you could do that story and it would be fun and satisfying and it would look great. And I would take issue with the fact that, like, yes, when Doc Shaner does Silver Age, he's great. But Doc Cage, like, he could do whatever.
Oh no, he should not get pigeonholed the way Darwin Cook got pigeonholed. I hope it does not happen. It's just that he's drawing a Silver Age story. It doesn't look like a Silver Age comic. It looks like a modern comic in every sense of the word. He's just drawing that storyline.
Exactly.
I don't know why he's not on Superman or some other book at the moment.
No, absolutely. I want to point that, like, I don't even want to call him a Silver Age artist, even though that when he does, you're right, it sings. But I feel like I worry. That's it. I just worry that the industry will go, this is what you do. You know, he's a guy who's been on the edges for a while.
That's not an unfounded worry, because he has been doing all the Silver Age covers for the DC omnibuses that have been coming out. There's a lot of evidence he's already been pigeonholed into that role.
Well, I'm happy he's getting work, at least.
Yeah. That was the pick of the week. It was a clear pick of the week. It wasn't even close. However, DCeased, and I know people are sick of it, but DCeased, Hope at World's End #3 was the pick of the week until I read Strange Adventures. This is the third issue of the digital first / perhaps only miniseries that Tom Taylor's doing. This issue is drawn by Carmen Di Giandomenico, who used to do the Flash issues, and he was the best Flash artist in that run. And so, appropriately, this story is about Wally West during the outbreak, and unexpectedly becomes a reunion of the Flash family from Wally's run, which what's great about this book is that it's an Elseworld story, which means Tom Taylor can use whatever characters and continuity he wants. And so here, it's basically, as we talked about before, the old universe, even though Wally's wearing the new costume. So we get Max Mercury, we get Impulse, and we get Jesse Quick, who were all mainstays of his book way back when Jeff Johns was writing it, as they attempt to rescue everyone from Keystone City who has not been affected and put them into an alternate dimension Earth. It's very flashy. There's a double treadmill. And then, of course, there's a sad sacrifice at the end. I thought this was terrific.
Yeah, there's a panel, I guess it would be on page 10, where they're all standing there. You've got Max Mercury and Kid Flash. And if you close... No, I was looking at Wally.
Oh.
I just, if you close your eyes and you just imagine he's not wearing that costume,
right,
then it's extra fantastic.
You're not a fan of the Blue Lightning?
I don't, it was the best costume of all time, period. Because Wally was the Flash during that era, and he was just the Flash.
Yeah.
So he had the regular... But having all four of those characters there is great, but also the fact that, like, they're all standing in the kitchen. And that actually means a lot. No, I'm serious.
It's where the family hangs.
Exactly. And that has to be about the family. It's not all pose out in the world. It's them trying to work out a problem in their kitchen. And not all superhero comic books should be that. But that element I thought was really nice, that they were sort of just at home and then they had this problem to solve. And of course, that some shit is going to happen because this is a zombie book. And it's crushing.
Yeah.
It's really sad. And then, but the thing that was different about this book than all the other ones is that, much like The Walking Dead, it's a tragedy. So at the end of all of them, some sad shit happens, and it's like, right, there's no winning this fight. But in this one, we got the closest thing that we're going to get to a happy ending. And I thought that was really delightful.
It was a double happy ending because they did end up saving most of the people they were trying to save. It wasn't like there was a tragedy where they were saving people and the zombies overtook them. They got everyone out. It's just that one of the heroes was hurt in the process, but then he gets to not succumb to the disease and gets to live on in the Speed Force. It was
that last panel page is just lovely.
I know that I'm going to ask this question and everyone's going to shout injustice at me, but where the hell did Tom Taylor come from?
Australia.
They got Hemsworths and Taylors out there. They should be stopped.
They're lousy with Hemsworth.
So
they have really pretty blonde women who look just like other really pretty blonde women.
So we've been banging this drum the entire time for DCeased, and I know people are sick of it, but it's really good. And they keep putting more books out, and we keep sort of grumbling because we think they're going to dilute the story. But this series has been really good.
I mean, Tom Taylor clearly has a talent for like carving his own little corner out of the DC universe, because he did that with Injustice 2, and I know people really loved that run, even though I didn't really get into it. He seems to be able to really create worlds from whole cloth and can kind of do it all on his own, and it's amazing. It's just fascinating to watch as a storytelling experiment.
I also think that he, the bias here is that he clearly came up in the same era of comics.
I'm sure he's run the same
at least Conor and I did, and so he keeps taking it back to like, no, this was the really good stuff, and of course, Conor and I are like, yes, that is the good stuff, because this was, like in the sort of nascent years of this entity that we, this iFanboy thing, this is what the stuff was. And these were like, honestly, these are the books that made us fall in love. In fact, if we want to go to it even further, the Flash family stuff from this era, that's one of the first comics that myself, Conor, and Ron literally bonded over.
Yes.
That is a very important time. But so it's validating to have this guy, clearly also think that, and this is prior to Jeff Johns' Flash run, which is where I think a lot of other people sort of came into it.
This Flash family stuff, I think that was Johns.
I think Wade transitioned to Johns during that period.
Yeah, that's what happened. But I'm trying to remember when it was Max Mercury, Impulse, and Jesse Quick. And
that was more the Wade stuff. I don't think that carried over into
you're right.
the Jeff Johns run as much.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
No, John's thing was all about rogues.
That's true.
But there were little touches in here, like when Wally is talking to Batman and he says, "Tell Dick to stay out of trouble." And hearkening back to that relationship, which like the Wally West Dick Grayson relationship was really important.
Yep.
Back when Wally West was a major player.
Yeah, they're best friends, and so then you cut to the Batcave where Dick is dead, and like it was. Oh God, it's really good. It's really good.
How do you guys feel about this digital format with the widescreen?
Josh hates it. I don't care.
I don't hate it. It reads fine. It feels like everything's blown up too much, so it bothers me, and it feels like I'm getting half the story, which I am.
It's true.
It's 23, or actually it's 20. It's 22 pages finally, but they cut the pages in half, so it's 11 pages.
Well, it's probably 20 with the cover.
Right, exactly. So
you're getting half an issue with each one of these digital releases.
Yep. It's not like panel by panel bad at all. Like they get a chance to do storytelling in panels, and that to me is comics. So that's good. It just it's going to be really hard for me to ever look at a non-portrait comic book page and think that it is good enough.
Although there have been great, horizontal comics in the past.
Absolutely, but it's like people getting over the fact that like rock and roll should be bass, drums, and guitar. It feels like those elements need to be there.
I do want to mention Carmen Didomenico, who was probably the best artist on the current run of Flash. He does a really great job of showing the crackling of lightning around the Flash characters.
Which is impressive because you don't like the crackling of lightning.
Well, no, the actual lightning, not the suit lines. And that was what he made the Flash stuff palatable. He turned the lines into crackling lightning. It's sort of a way to have your cake and eat it too, and that really worked. He does speed and motion really, really well.
Yeah. And I think actually, it's basically it all feels zoomed in to me because I'm sure that he drew this
regular,
in regular pages and everything, so everything gets pushed in, so it makes it feel like all the ink lines and the panel borders are all heavier than they need to be. So it feels a little like I'm reading a kid's book. Is kind of the feeling that I get. Like it doesn't have the delicacy because of the fact that it is the same thing, but they're zooming in on it, twice as much. I think that's got a lot to do with it.
I want to comment real quickly on these DC social distancing ads with Batman and Robin. Mm-hmm. If we just shove Damian to the left a little bit more. Just take 2 more steps, and then you're fine.
Also, like, Batman's is one of the... he's a character whose mask is the exact opposite of what we're all supposed to be wearing.
Right. That's true.
It's like it's exposing the one part.
I feel like only bad guys have the lower mask.
That's true.
Yeah.
I can't think of a good guy who does.
I think you're tapping into something with our current culture war, Josh.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Valkyrie Jane Foster number 10, which is one of the few books that Marvel put out, and this is a series that was in paper and now it's only coming out digitally. All the best Marvel books have gone only digital because no one's buying them. Jason Aaron and Torin Gronbeck are our writers, and Roman Rosanas.
I gotta. Torin Gronbeck is got to be in the new top 5 best names in comics.
Any Icelandic name. I also said Ramon. I don't know why I said Ramon, because it's 6 o'clock in the morning.
A cool thing about Torin that I heard, and I believe this is true as far as I know, first time a Scandinavian person has actually co-written or worked on a Thor book.
I'm sure that's true.
A native Scandinavian person, probably.
Sure.
We find out there's a long backlash of American Scandinavian people who were locked out of comics.
Yeah, I guess Walter Simonson probably does have some, But yes, and a currently still in the old country Scandinavian person.
Right. Yeah, they got that thing through the O, so yeah, totally.
What's interesting about reading a book like this, because, this also happened to Hawkeye. Hawkeye, at least, I think, is a limited series now, but this was ostensibly an ongoing. So reading this, I'm not even sure how I'm supposed to be feeling. Is it ending right now? How many more issues do we have?
Felt like a last issue to me.
Yeah, it did. I don't know that it is, but it felt like it.
And usually going to digital only, is not a good sign. And also, if you've got Jason Aaron's name on it, that means that there's going to be somewhat of an overhead, unless he said, don't pay me as much for this. None of those are good signs for sort of keeping a book around for a while. But focusing on the issue itself, I thought it was a wonderful issue. It was really fun, and I became sad that like, oh man, this is going to wrap up at some point. But one of the cool things that sort of came out of the I was going to say Lady Thor, but anyway, Jane Foster being around is that she has this relationship with the gods now, and so like her hanging around with Volstagg and him treating her sort of like an equal, and I love hanging out with Volstagg. That's a good time always. We've got this other sort of focus on, they got rid of Heimdall. Ugh. It's so
and now Sif is.
I know, and I don't mind that, but like the reason that they love Heimdall is because Heimdall died in the movies. Maybe I don't know, but that's dumb. But I have really enjoyed. It happened with Daredevil too. There's like an exploration of what the Rainbow Bridge person is, and how they see everything all at once, and like it just feels proper Kirby, proper big and godlike. And then at the end, I thought the sort of depiction of what this little sort of black nothingness universe, it's falling around like a sad dog. Right. And it was sort of a great idea and a great visual, and it really, the whole thing really had this feeling of sort of authentic, mythological mysticism, and I think that was really fun, and that's a thing that sometimes is missing from this book, and it should be the center point of the book.
And also, like, having a villain that's essentially just the end of the universe, darkness, blackness, like it's vague enough to be actually kind of ominous.
They can't punch their way out of this one.
Yeah, I found it kind of affecting that, like, oh, that actually is kind of creepy in a way that not a lot of comic book villainry comes off as creepy. The
effect of the comic of the skull in the void, it worked actually really well. Josh and I were just talking about Kirby and his collage work, and that's felt in that vein, and it felt other. It didn't feel like it was part of the page in that sense. It was strange, and it worked for me. Yeah. It didn't feel like, that's a drawing. It feels like that's a real thing, which in contrast to the characters worked.
I mean, especially juxtaposed against something as colorful as the Rainbow Bridge, too.
Right. Thor and a bunch of the characters have been possessed, and so they fight their friends. And at the end, when they freed them, Thor says, "Would you have killed me?" And she's like, "Yeah, I would have." That was a good scene.
Well, 'cause she's a real Valkyrie. Yeah. Like she's the real deal. That whole thing's been fun, and also like there's a cool. She's actually become a really cool character because like they used to date.
Right.
And they're friends now. But like there's nothing to it. They're not going for tension.
There's no tension at all, yeah.
Right.
There's affection, which is nice.
There's affection, there's respect, there's, real friendship. Their relationship has nothing to do with their relationship other than like they have history that made them close and made them who they are now. And it's like, sure, it's interesting and I think it works really well, and we don't get a lot of that.
I think mature is a good word for it. Yeah.
Yeah, she's an equal. There's even a bit in here where she's missing her weapon, and so that puts her on a parallel with Thor. Like she,
But I like that even as just Jane Foster human, she's willing. Like she's with Volstagg. She's like, all right, let's go to the armory. I'm gonna get a sword. Like,
yep. Yeah. No. Yeah.
I was like, that's awesome.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
There's no chance that she's gonna sit out of the fight just because she doesn't have the ultra powerful all weapon.
Right.
No,
she's still a warrior.
Volstagg respects her for it. Like he's like, here, take all the weapons. Like he's like, this will make her feel better. She shouldn't go out there. She's in remission, and she's immortal. But it was just there's a lot of sweetness. There was that sort of heroic stuff. It was good.
This was probably a surprise to you two guys and anyone listening, but we wanted to talk about Mad Magazine number 14.
I saw that,
which is by no means the real number of this magazine. I want to mention it because Al Jaffe, who retired this past week, was 94. So this issue is an all Al Jaffe tribute issue. And I want to mention it briefly because when I was a kid, and I'm very curious to hear how it differs with Ryan, but when I was a kid, Mad Magazine was as important as comics, Marvel and DC Comics. Everyone who I was friends with also read Mad Magazine in addition to reading comics. More people read Mad Magazine than I knew reading comics. I knew a lot of people who read comics in the 80s. Everyone read Mad, everyone read Cracked. And it was just part of the culture. So it was interesting to go back and read. It's probably been 25 years since I've read an issue of Mad Magazine.
I read it when they relaunched. I read number 1 for the show, but I didn't put it on.
So it was interesting to go back and read. This is the greatest hits issue of Al Jaffe's work, both as a writer and an artist and a writer-artist. It was fun to go back and see stuff I remembered, be back in that headspace. It's very much of a time. The sense of humor has not changed all that much. It's very much of that sort of vaudevillian early 80s. It's not like modern humor. It's very much
broad.
It's very broad humor.
They're dad jokes, but they're from when the dads were kids.
Right.
In a way. I mean, I was going to say, when I read that first issue, I guess would have been 14 months ago, more or less, when they relaunched it, I thought, oh, this is exactly the same as it was.
It's exactly
maybe
the same.
Maybe it's because it's the same people who are doing it for the most part. Or at least, or at least everybody who was doing it had grown up with it, and they were like, this is what we do. That's our thing. Their voice, their brand was very consistent in that way.
Mad's a division of DC Comics. People may or may not know. We toured their offices when we did their DC video show and interviewed one of the editors.
That was the best part of that day.
That was terrific. But, Al Jaffe was an incredibly talented writer and artist. Just to scroll through this issue and see all the different work. And it gives you the year it came out, and it goes, you're talking from now until, the 60s.
Yeah.
It's quite a career.
He's one of those guys like John Severin, or who I knew from Cracked. That's where I first learned him. Or Richard Corbin. Like these guys who have this beautiful art style and unique to them, signature sort of art style, who seems to have not lessened in their capability over time.
Sergio Aragones, who's all over this issue too, who was a mainstay at Mad, in addition to making books like Gru, in the same time period, which was a classic book.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm too young. I pretty much missed Mad entirely.
I think that's about right.
I'm not surprised at all. It was very important in the 80s, and then I think in the 90s it was different.
So yeah, I don't have any pre-existing relationship with this other than the few comics I've seen here and there, and like Spy vs. Spy was popular for a while. Yeah, I can definitely appreciate the art style and the technical craftsmanship that goes into it, and all the different styles that this guy was able to do. But in terms of actual comic book storytelling, I was a bit at a loss of what I was supposed to be getting out of this.
No, this was totally a tribute to this guy who retired well into his 90s, and also a tribute to a book that was very important for a long time for a lot of people. I mean, I had a giant box of comics, and I had a giant box of Mad magazines as a kid.
What I took out of that was interesting is that you talk about the stuff like you had lots of people reading comics and lots of people reading, and I was the only one doing either of those that I knew of. Like it was such a solitary thing that just I had.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, you grew up in a city and I didn't.
Yeah. Every guy friend I had in elementary school read comics and Mad magazine.
Well, I mean, if we're going to get to this, like you and like our group of friends from like when I got to college were the first people I was friends with who liked things like I liked.
Right.
I mean, like I had none of that.
So college is for finding those people.
You find your people, and you're still my people. So that's very interesting.
I just did the maze on the cover. It worked. While you were talking, I was doing it with my finger, and it worked.
Yeah, because sometimes you find your people, but they don't really give a shit.
No, I was listening, but I was just also doing the maze. I understand. Thank you. 94 years old is quite a career, and who knows? Obviously, Mad's not relevant to the broader culture anymore, and it's fine.
It is in terms of influence, though.
Yeah, no, I know. I just mean in terms of actual product.
Yeah. Like, you can draw a line from Mad Magazine to National Lampoon to Saturday Night Live to literally everything.
Yes. They put a Mort Drucker story in that Al Jaffe wrote, one of those movie parodies.
Yeah.
And that art is what I think about when I think about Mad. Just
I know exactly what
incredibly good at cartooning and at drawing real people in a cartoony way, and I always looked forward to the movie or the TV parody in the issue of Mad because the art is incredible.
It also tells you a little something about the anachronism of it, that it's a man named Mort.
I do remember when Bart Simpson went to the Mad Magazine offices and it was just an office, and I thought that was really funny.
Mm-hmm.
It was just an office. Full of very funny people, but it was.
Yeah. But like funny people, like people used to be funny.
Right.
Like you would have done great on Carson.
Yeah. All right. There you go. That was Mad Magazine 14. Good job, Al Jaffe. It's quite a career.
The usual gang of idiots. I love that they stuck with their recurring gags, and I think that we can appreciate that. If you appreciate that, you can go to patreon.com/iFanboy to help support the show. I mean, I've seen this all across, like, sort of everything during this pandemic. You know, the people who make small footprinted content, I just coined that phrase, are really getting supported by the people who are listening to them, and vice versa. Like, I think that the podcast, the people who you connect with, the people who you admire or just really relate to, it's a really great time for that right now. I think it's personalized in a way that can feel very comforting. So one of the ways to do that is via Patreon, our show or whatever shows you do it for. But if you're doing it with us, A, we thank you, and B, there is a new stretch goal up. If you liked G.I. Joe Corner, we will add that as a weekly show, maybe monthly. We haven't decided, but we're going to go through all the G.I. Joe episodes if we get above that threshold. Besides that, though, I mean, it really helps. It's a really big deal, and we're so thankful. You could also get some merch. You can get some merch, but also it's not just merch. It's merch that does some good. Over at iFanboy.threadless.com, we have 8 designs over there. You can get t-shirts, you can get sweatshirts, you can get tri-blend shirts. I have some on the way. They have not arrived yet. They should be here soon. I believe all customer support stuff and all that stuff is taking a long time.
Sure.
So we all know that. Anyway, if you are getting the Stay Home and Read Comics design, a portion of all the sales from any of the products with that will go to the Comic Book United Fund. We'll be making that donation on July 1st. So get those orders in if you wanted to. They make a darn fine mask.
Kid masks are now available. So if you want masks for your kids, because that's where we are.
Yeah, if you let them out of the house, which I intend to not.
They have kid masks now, so there you go.
Actually, my kids are like, they're like, we don't have to go anywhere? No. Great. We're so okay with that. New designs are always in the works, the thinking process. Anyway, we'll wrap this up. If none of that works for you, but you say you want to throw something in the tip jar, you can go over to ifanboy.com/support. You'll find a PayPal link over there. And there's finally ifanboy.com/Amazon. You will find a link to the books from Booksplode. You will find a general link to Amazon. And you can also find the links to our pick of the week, and always like the music we use on the show is always on the show page on ifanboy.com. So thanks everyone for all those things that you do. Everwatch. That's a new
Everwatch.
thing. Yeah, sure.
Ryan, is this the book you were talking about?
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, you just talked about G.I. Joe. That I think I'm about to expose the difference in our ages, because the next book I want to talk about is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles number 5. Story by Ryan Parrott, art by Simone DiMeo. And, oh my God, guys, this book was so good.
I can respect your enthusiasm, and I love it. But I want you to hurry up and get this over with.
Okay, I will be as quick as I can. I didn't read 1 through 4, so I was worried I was going to be lost.
So why did you read this?
Because when I come on the show, I usually try to grab something that isn't in my normal, list of books, just to see if I can bring something different to the show. And in this instance, it was so worth it. I don't know what was happening before issue 5 started, but it basically begins with the Turtles driving the Megazord in order to fight a giant-sized Bebop and Rocksteady, and it just gets zanier from there. Shredder has the Green Ranger power coin, so he's playing the flute and controlling the Dragon Zord. Metalhead gets giant-sized and morphs with the Megazord into Turtle Megazord. It's so good. It was just wacky, zany fun, where they just completely, they took all the best toys and just mashed them together into one giant toy, and I just had a lot of fun with it. And I will apologize to no one.
It's funny because you're right. Like, I was on the edge of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. These comics came out when we were younger, and I wasn't fully aware of them, but a little bit. But like the toys and the cartoons and everything came out just when we were, cresting adolescence. I still had some of the toys. I still thought it was really cool. But
I still watch the cartoon every day.
Quickly. Yeah. But Power Rangers though is the real
That's the generational divide. We were too old. We were in high school, I think.
Yeah. And I was like, what the hell is this? My brother, who's 8 years younger than me, was super into that. And I know
nothing about them. I know nothing. I don't know what they can do. I don't know what their powers, the Power Rangers' powers are. I know nothing.
There's colors.
I know nothing.
It wasn't that clear even if you watched the show, because I don't know if you guys knew how the show was made, but they just took a Japanese Super Sentai show and refilmed the parts where they're out of costume with American teenage actors and put it out.
And now the Sabans are billionaires.
It was a brilliant cost-saving technique.
Yes.
It made for a fun kid show.
They're very, very wealthy now. All right. Anyone else read A Man Among Ye, number 1, from Image and Top Cow?
I did.
Yes.
This is from writer Stephanie Phillips, who wrote The Butcher of Paris. And the art was by Craig Cermak. And this is the story of pirates. And what I liked about it was that it was just pirates. Stephanie Phillips likes genre stories because there's no monsters, there's no zombies, there's no aliens. It's just pirates. Relatively real pirates. She talks about it in the backup essay that, all the main characters here are based on either real people or real legends of people. The British governor's real. The main pirate guy and then the woman, they're both real people from history, or at least real legends of history.
Did it feel to either of you like you'd stepped through a portal and we're now in the Watchmen universe where these were the popular comics?
No.
Because I had that moment where I was like, this must be what it was like for that little kid at the newsstand to be reading his pirate comics.
Oh, that's interesting.
Kind of. So here's my problem.
Yeah.
It was a little like because of The Butcher of Paris, I think I expected it to be a little more like realistic, and it was a little more cartoony. Like it was like over the top and sort of, stereotypical sort of what you would think of like Silver Age pirate stories with like pretty faces and everyone was very clean. And I just was, I was like, I was hoping it was like a real pirate story. Like what was that one, Shanghai Red?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that, a little more.
This is more an adventure. This is more like Disney pirates. This is more like Johnny Depp pirates.
Yeah, like 1960s Disney sort of pirates kind of thing. And there's a bit where like they're having a big fight and he's stabbing everybody, and then they cut to the sort of double page or the full page at the end, and like he's pristine clean, like his suit is beautiful. And I was like, well, that's fine. But if I adjust, it's fine. I actually think it's kind of interesting that Stephanie Phillips has that kind of range. Like it's one thing, to like. Greg Rucka books kind of always feel like Greg Rucka books, but she did one kind of book over there, and then this is a different kind of book over here. I was trying to think where I knew Craig Cermak from, and I looked him up, and he did Red Team. He did some stuff from Dynamite, but I think he must have done some of the Red Sonja. I feel like he was on some of that.
The art was fine. I didn't love it.
Yeah.
Sometimes the bodies were scrunched. Sometimes the heads were at weird angles, but it did its job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of costuming that they had to pull off, and I thought they pulled that off pretty well.
Yes.
And I also just I've been to the Caribbean. I don't want to wear that many clothes.
No,
I was having that thought too. They were in Hispaniola's what? That's Dominican
That is the Dominican Republic and Haiti.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's hot.
That's what they dressed.
And it's not like they had, particularly breathable weaves back then. I would have died.
A lot of wool.
Died. Yeah.
I don't know. It was fun. I didn't love it, but it was fun, and I'm definitely going to read more just because there's a dearth of alien monster stories out there, so.
Did it feel more like a Top Cow book or more like an Image book?
It felt like a Dynamite book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see it. It didn't feel like an Image book to me at all. That was kind of what threw me, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, Image doesn't usually do this kind of thing. Image is like king of everything in sci-fi now.
Well, maybe aliens will show up in the next issue.
Whatever the hipster zeitgeist flavor of the month is, that's all the books for 2 years.
So.
This is Top Cow?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Top Cow's a whole other animal. That's not Image, really.
Young Justice 15 was written by Brian Michael Bendis and David Walker with art by John Timms and Scott Godlewski.
Yeah.
Godlewski. Yeah, I've been sticking with this. I've been enjoying it. It's doing that Bendis thing that's also kind of happening in Legion of Superheroes, where they're taking what doesn't need to be a giant reveal and kind of stringing it out on us a little bit. And that's happening with Superboy here.
I agree with some of that. I think it is a giant reveal that they keep stringing along to the point of never answering, and it's becoming stupid. The whole thing is he is from the other universe. He was not in our world when Flashpoint happened. He's from the old world, and why do some of these characters remember him and some don't? That's a major thing if they're ever going to actually deal with it, but they don't seem to be ever actually dealing with it. It's just Bendis seems to like to constantly tease it in all of his books.
And we're talking about Conor Kent, the Superboy, who is the half Superman, half Lex Luthor clone,
right?
Who was a really important part of Teen Titans, Young Justice for a long time. But now that Superman has a kid, it's sort of the Robin issue, which also Tim Drake is in this book.
It's more like the other Wally West. Is that his name?
Yeah, two Wallies.
There's a second Wally West.
Wallace
West.
Yeah. That's like, okay.
Because Conor Kent was in Gem World, he was saved from the universe shifting around him. Also, I'm gonna admit something to both of you right now in confidence. Please don't tell anyone. I never put together that Tim Drake. A drake is a type of bird.
Oh, Ryan, turn in your doctorate.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh.
I didn't catch that was a joke.
But that was the whole reason why he started calling himself Drake, because Drake's also a bird. It was terrible.
Except that everyone calls him Robin in this book.
Which I kind of love that they still all the characters still all call him Robin.
There's a lot of that going on in comics right now because so many of the writers and scripters are like, they think it's dumb. There's a lot of I just feel like I remember it was different. There's all these like hints that
it's a bad costume.
The costume is, and I know it's like my brand to complain, but it is hideous. It's gold and brown, and he has like shoulder pads.
Yeah,
and
the shoulder pads, a weird neck thing, especially compared to like, I know it's, aggressively, absurdly retro, but like Conor Kent with the shaved side head and the jacket with the spikes on it. I'm like, yeah, I'm digging this.
Well, he's standing there next to Conor Kent and Impulse and Cassie, and they're all sort of classic DC costumes. And then he's standing there in his dumbass,
It's terrible.
Too many design pieces on the jacket.
And no cape.
It's terrible.
Can't be part of the Bat family without a cape.
I do like that he and Stephanie are constantly making out, though, whenever in the background.
Was cute. And now they're teasing out some other mystery having to do with Bart Allen Impulse.
He's the reason, like, he was the one that brought this all up in the first place. He's the one who knew about, Conor, and knew that they're all from different universes. So he knows something he's not saying. I don't mind it. It's just that there's no indication they're ever going to deal with it. So that's what's annoying about it. But I do like this book a lot. I'm always excited to read it.
And it's pretty.
Yeah.
Other than the costume.
So those are the books we wanted to talk about, but at patreon.com/iFanboy, you can go there. Any patron at any level can vote to add a book to the rundown. And that this week, the clear winner, although it got a little tight at the end, but the clear winner was Dark Knight's Death Metal #1 from Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, Jonathan Glapion, FCO, Placencia, and Tom Napolitano. God, that's early. The classic team from all the Snyder Batman stuff. I like that they've all worked together. I like that he's got his team. I like that kind of thing. I think I'm the only one that read the first one, right? Josh, I think you read a couple of issues of the first one.
Metal?
Dark Knight's Metal.
Probably. Maybe one. I can't imagine I read more.
No, I don't think you read more than one or two.
Yeah, I think I also read one, and then it was not for me.
I remember liking the first one. I think it might have even been pick of the week. And then very quickly not liking. This is where we got introduced to the Batman Who Laughs.
Just saying it.
So what's funny about this was I started reading it and I was like, I have zero recollection of what happened in the other miniseries. Like, just if someone walked in with a gun and put it to my head and said, "Tell me what happened in Dark Knight's Metal," I would just say, "Pull the trigger," because I don't know. I've removed it from my brain. And I remember it's some sort of post-apocalyptic world where the Dark Universe came in, and that they got all mixed up with the Justice League book that Snyder was also doing. Where he kept the story going, and Perpetua and Lex Luthor, and I just don't remember enough of it. And I feel like maybe they should have done a little bit more to remind people. Otherwise, you're only hoping people who read the last one are reading this one. The first page features Sergeant Rock yelling at us to
eat turds.
I actually kind of like the first page, but then there are actually some things about this issue I liked. But for the most part, I don't respond to this story, and I don't know why it's being. Other than they clearly want to tell it, I don't know why it's being told.
Is this popular? Are there people who are just super into this and I just don't know them?
I think.
Okay.
I think that there's a...
Because, yeah, I hated this.
Oh.
This was awful. I really did not enjoy reading this.
I had a really, really hard time reading it. But also, like, I knew what it was, and I knew I didn't like it. And I knew going into it that what they were doing with this is amping up the part of it that I don't like. And what I think is interesting is that, I mean, Conor, you said it's nice that they're all together, and that is, but also it's just making it just like they keep driving further away from where this was. And, Scott Snyder's done a lot of work that I like, but I don't know what this is. I really do think this is some people's jam, and I don't want to take it away from them. So I'm going to put this in the context of this might be really good if this is your jam, but I can't find any way to get into it. I hate everything about that Batman Who Laughs character. I hate it. I don't like what it looks like. I don't like the idea around it. I think it is ultimate. Like it's an interesting idea, but is ultimately antithetical to Batman as a concept. That there would be a version of him. You know what I mean? Like, I like the idea. If I was writing this, which is the shittiest thing a reviewer can say, I'd like the idea that if there is a Bruce Wayne, then Bruce Wayne is always going to be that good guy, and that's the thing about him. I think that's.
Well, I think isn't the Batman Who Laughs the Joker?
I thought he was Bruce Wayne who went crazy because
I don't even remember.
No, I think he's Bruce Wayne because that's the thing that it keeps coming back in this over and over again.
Is that he can think like Bruce.
Yeah, and he's always one step ahead of everybody. And so when he's talking to Wonder Woman, he's like, I've planned for all this. And then she gets him with an invisible metal chainsaw, which, again, it's a fine idea, and I could see sitting around and coming up with ideas and go, oh, this is awesome.
Oh, that's what that was?
That's what that was? Yeah, I didn't get that at all.
I actually looked at that sequence 3 times trying to figure out what the weapon was she got.
It looks like she was stabbing him with like a double hairpin.
It was a chainsaw, and that's why there's chainsaw. Yep. I had to go over it a couple times too. That's why there's a chainsaw sound effect.
Yep. I see it now that you said it, but I could not for the life of me figure out what happened in that sequence beforehand.
Yeah. There are some good ideas in here. One of them is that melting down the invisible jet gives them invisible... Like, they were going to make it to armor so they'd be invisible, but they made it into invisible weapons.
Actually,
those are good ideas.
That is a really good idea to think that it is made of a material. Yeah. I don't think I'd ever considered that. I think that's kind of cool.
That's the thing. Every once in a while, there'd be something like, oh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. But it's in this story that... I like kind of elseworldy post-apocalyptic stories as evidenced by a lot of the books we talk about who are in that genre, but there's just so many of them right now, and I just don't know what the point of this is.
I mean, I think there's a thing in the zeitgeist where
everyone's like fuck this.
It's the end of the world, so let's make it crazy so at least it's kind of funny to look at. I don't know, something like that. I think from a there were some things at a technical standpoint that I really had a hard time with. There was a lot of explanation of myths. There were pages of dialogue that were explaining what was going on, and when you kind of don't care what's going on, it's really hard to get through. And then you multiply that with the fact that my least favorite lettering in comics is black with red text. I hate it. I can't read it. I can't read it. I especially can't read it digitally. Like I genuinely... I just don't like trying to read it. I can't do it. I just want to skip over it and hope I'll figure the rest out from context. And I just think that it's like the point of the letter is clarity, not design. And if you can put design into that clarity, fine. But if not, you're making it harder to read, which, compounds on the fact that I didn't want to read it.
And also, I don't know who to talk to about, can we pull back on the Watchmen stuff?
Well, that's what they're doing.
But I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm rereading Watchmen right now, and Watchmen is very good. I don't know why Wally West needs to be Dr. Manhattan.
Well, yeah, that came out of that whole disaster that we didn't read. I mean, I like Capullo a lot, and there's some really good pages here and some really good character work, and I didn't know that was Wally at first because he's wearing the blue costume with the Dr. Manhattan thing, and for some reason they're coloring his hair brown, which they've done before.
I didn't put together that was the thing. I knew it was Wally, but I didn't know there was a Dr.
He's got the hydrogen.
He's got the symbol on his forehead, which came out of that. Yeah, it did. Came out of that miniseries we didn't read, the Flash Forward one or whatever it was called. Flash something. Forward Flash.
I don't know who this is for, but it's not me. And I again, I'm not taking away from them, but I don't want this. I had a really hard time finishing this. I
feel like when you put this up against Young Justice, which is also dealing with a similar idea of the crises and the nature of reality, it almost feels like there's many factions within DC, and they are all sort of fighting to get to tell what is going on in the DC universe, and there's no cohesion to it. Mm-hmm. Everyone's sort of telling their own version of why the DC is the way it is, and therefore there's no real reason because everyone's telling their own version of it.
Well, let's zero down on that a little, though.
Beyond business.
I feel like we have, in the past, like a long time ago, when maybe we didn't know any better, there's been times where you'd read something that isn't connected to anything else, and you're like, oh, that's really cool. Everybody should do this. But now we kind of have that. But I think that the problem there is that a lot of them are telling the same, you're right, they're telling the same kind of story.
There's no bedrock to what's being told, which you need to have a bedrock from which to spring from.
If you're in continuity, that's true.
Yeah.
But if they're all in continuity and they're doing different things, that's one thing. Or who knows about continuity. But at the same time, if you go over to DCeased, which we were just talking about, there's no doubt that is happening in a different world and time and place and all this. There's no, he's not weaving in any of the stuff that is currently going on to try to put a latch in there to connect it. And I think it's the better for that. Mm-hmm. Whereas all these other ones you're talking about, they are all saying, well, what if our jump off point is the button or the whatever, flashpoint or, and so since they're all starting from that same point, then it starts to get confusing about what's happening. So, nobody will talk, you won't be reading everything, but then one of them will be like, yeah, the source wall. I'm like, well, wait a minute, where'd that come in? Or the fucking strong force or the whatever, like the metal and it's all just sort of like, it's been spread out. There's this diaspora of subpar DC ideas that everybody picks up a little part of and runs with. And so, yes, no cohesion, I think is what you're getting to.
Yeah. And I'm not necessarily complaining about it here. It's just because this is clearly a future.
I get that.
It's just hard when DC has no bedrock because there's just no. They blew it up with Flashpoint, and then the problem is they didn't create a new one. Everyone went off in their own directions, which is fine if you want to have everyone's just be in their own continuity. But it's supposed to be a shared universe, so at some point there should be some sort of idea of what is happening here.
Is this in continuity in some way?
It says at one point this is the real DC universe, and Snyder tied it into his Justice League run with the first part. So
I'm going to go back to one other thing.
Okay.
You said, I really like Greg Capullo.
I do.
And I think that I like how Greg Capullo draws, but I don't think I like what he wants to draw, if that makes sense. This thing feels to me like a jagged, ugly metal guitar. Like, you can buy a guitar, and if you're into that kind of thing, you can get the one with the 6 points like, Zakk Wylde plays. But I think it's ugly. And it might sound great and it might play amazing, but I don't like the ugly's not even the word. I don't like the aesthetic, and I don't like the music that you play with it. You know what I mean? Like it just it's called heavy metal. This is the thing that they're going for. That's the aesthetic they want.
Metal.
And I get that. But what's interesting though is that like it's a genre. It's a type of metal though.
Yeah.
It's like a hardcore version of hair metal, meaning it's not like metal's a lot of things, like as an actual musical genre, and I don't really like any of them, but this seems to indicate the one that I don't like the most.
Which is probably not helping.
No, it's totally, and so what I'm, the criticism has a lot to do with it, with it's really not for me, and I can recognize that, but also I have a hard time seeing who it's for.
I think it also, part of it, Josh, to kind of build off what you were saying, is when you don't have much context for the story being told, it's hard not to focus on sort of the style over the substance. And if the story you're being told doesn't connect with you or doesn't even really make sense to you, and you don't like the style, I think the style is even more offensive is probably the wrong word, but like it's just more, it stands out even harsher.
It's anathema to my taste. To my sensibility. It's just, that is subjective to a point.
Well, I mean, I think it's, I don't know. I think the style is definitely subjective. I'm not going to say this is bad storytelling. It's just the story that's being told I'm not that interested in.
I think there were storytelling issues.
Well, there was clearly an issue with the invisible chainsaw. I didn't know what that was.
That's just a moment of technical stuff.
Right, that's what I mean.
But also what Josh said with there being like pages of just really dense text that I thought really, I don't know. I'm a person who, when I'm reading a comic and I hit a page that's a wall of text, it's a slog to get past that, even if it's
unless
interesting.
it isn't.
Right.
Yes.
No, I mean, unless it isn't. And Scott Snyder is not immune to this. He's done this lots of times, but he's gotten away with it. He's gotten away with it a lot of times. Here, I probably wasn't willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because of everything around it, maybe.
It's like we review films, and if the movie's badly done, then the things you might overlook stand out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but also like I accept the fact that like the people making these are good at comics. Yeah. They're not. It's not like nobody is like, man, they don't know what they're doing. What is this? So it's more like, well, what is this? Because it doesn't feel like they know what they're doing. But I'm also not dumb enough to think that. I'm absolutely right about everything.
I recognize it's definitely not for me or anyone on the show, but I also recognize that there's clearly an audience for it, and also the people making it clearly are having a blast doing it. And whether or not that's resonating with me as a reader, that's up to me as the audience.
Yeah,
but
I think that's fair.
They're definitely enjoying it, and for that I, applaud them because they're having fun making the comics they want to make.
And
it's just not the comics I want to read.
I mean, Conor, you were planning on reading this even if it wasn't the Patron Pick,
I was going
right?
to check it out because it's a big release and you don't get to see Capullo draw that much. So I was definitely going to read it no matter what. Again, I liked the first issue of Metal way back when, but that was before the story really sort of unfolded. Before, Batman Who Laughs, all those people showed up. It was kind of the strange Justice League story that Snyder and Capullo were doing, and then all of a sudden it became weird. So I was going to give it one shot.
All right, we should probably stop flogging this.
Ratings.
Oh,
Out of 5.
Ratings.
1.
Also 1.
With a question mark?
I feel like I'm going to get an email about this.
You would think that Batman as a robotic T-Rex would be right up my alley, but I just thought it was dumb.
Two stars. So there you go.
When they voted for this, they knew that. This is what they asked for.
I don't know. Who knows what is in the mind of the patron?
I briefly glanced on the Facebook group. Somebody like, well, what should we make them read? That had a real vindictive. It was subtle, but it was definitely like...
All right. Patreon.com/iFanboy. Any patron can vote to add a book to the rundown, but the patrons who give it a $5 or higher level get their own superpowers live on the show as a way of thanks.
First up is JM, and JM's power is that any vehicle that he gets into is instantly modded out to the max of its performance capability. So they all turn into like super high-powered race car.
That sounds pretty metal, Josh.
It does.
It's well, unless you equate that with middle-aged British men, Top Gear, or I guess Grand Tour.
Power.
Exactly.
I got it. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yes. So give some examples here.
Well, so like the modding. So like if you got into like just a little normal base model Honda Civic, and then all of a sudden that turns into a 600 horsepower twin turbo, full on, looks the same on the outside, doesn't seem, but it has all that performance. So it basically maximizes the performance of any vehicle that he gets in.
Just while he's in it or permanently?
While he's in it.
Okay.
It's one of the aura powers.
And like any vehicle, so like if you got on a bike, like if you got on like a beach cruiser, it's suddenly a full suspension 29 or mountain
No, I'm going to
bike.
go with like a vehicle.
What about a city
I was gonna
bus?
say combustion. If he's driving it.
Oh, it has to be driving, so he can't be a passenger in a car.
Yeah, no, he's got to be driving it.
What he should do is get on the bus and be like, I'll take it from here.
Yeah. No one else is going to like that ride.
You take him to the go-kart track.
But like if you're talking about like a McLaren or whatever, you put it into track mode and then it keeps you stable, and so it doesn't like roll over or anything. And the suspension drops and stiffens and things like that. So that's what would happen with the bus.
I see.
I've been playing a lot of Forza Horizon.
What if he got into a tank?
Yeah, that would work.
It's faster tank.
Oh yeah, no, fast, powerful tank.
All right.
Only the mechanics though doesn't make the gun any better.
Todd Weber is a human air filter. So mold, spores, and fungus come in.
Go stand next to Conor is what you're asking for.
Clean air comes out.
Comes out of where?
That's a good question that no one wants the answer to.
He's a Dyson product.
Does he ever need to be cleaned? Like sometimes you got to clean the filter.
No, he's just it scrubs out.
It's his t-shirt.
He's more like a tree, but more aggressively
More
filtering.
like a tree. Does he produce oxygen?
Kinda, yeah. Clean oxygen comes out.
So what is he breathing?
But
That's
oddly
a
enough,
question you
the
don't wanna
thing that
answer
you're
to.
talking about, the other thing that comes out of the tree is also the thing that gives you the problem.
That's true. I'm just saying. Essentially, that's what's happening.
I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. This is an
You
effective
cut
example.
Todd Weber in half, and then all the spores, molds, and fungus come out again.
Oh wow! So he's a repository
Yeah.
for. Oh wow! So he keeps them, and does he have infinite capability for storage?
Yes, he's infinite storage, but he can't scrub the world. It's like anything. It's like you have a air filter in your house. So you can only filter air in such a small space.
What's he rated to? Is he like a HIPAA? That's a type of
It's
filter
the highest
rating?
compliance.
Well, then it's got to be better than HEPA. 'Cause
Yeah.
that stuff's old.
It sounds like he's a human fume hood. If you guys ever use a fume hood in a lab.
No,
I can't say we have. No,
Okay.
I mean since I've never even heard of that.
I haven't been in a lab since high school.
It's just an area in the lab that has like a fan above it, so it's constantly sucking the air up and away from you, so you
Right.
can work with like dangerous chemicals, and if something spills or aerosolizes,
The thing they have in any kitchen.
except this one's like lab grade.
Right? Yeah. I
You don't know about my kitchen.
My kitchen has one that's really bad. It's just a fan that blows grease everywhere.
Are you doing anything?
Mine doesn't have an outlet. It just has like a charcoal thing that we've never changed.
Peter Foltz should team up with JM because Peter Foltz can declare any body
it's
of
Pete.
It's Pete. Don't.
Pete.
Pete.
I'm sorry, Pete. I'm sorry. I formalized it. I apologize. Pete can declare, and it will become legally so, any body of water that he is on or near as international waters.
Does he work for a gaming concern?
You could do a lot. If you could fish for things that you're not allowed to fish for near the shore. You could get people married, monkey knife fights.
He's got like water diplomatic immunity.
Yeah, but he can declare it for the whole body of water. So if like he's out, so if he and JM take a boat that's like a
Wait,
supercharged
the whole
boat
body
out
of
on,
water.
out on Lake Michigan, he could say Lake Michigan is now international waters, and it has to be legally.
This seems more like a bureaucratic thing.
But it's much like JM. Like once he leaves Lake Michigan, it's not international water anymore. It's only while he's on it and has declared it. It does not happen automatically. He has to declare it.
He has to declare it. Is there a flag planting required of some kind?
Optional.
Okay.
It helps other people realize what's going on if he plants a flag. Otherwise, it just becomes international and they didn't even know.
All right. JM, Todd, and Pete, thanks for being patrons. Patreon.com/iFanboy is where you can go give it a $5 higher level and get your own dumb superpower live on the show. We got an email from Rashaad B, and I thought this was a good one to have while Ryan was on the show. He says, how fast does Superman fly? He seems to be able to leave Earth and come back at ease, and since the Earth is traveling at around 1,000 miles per hour in space, it's easily more than that.
I mean, I guess it comes down to like what's the mechanism by which Superman flies.
Also, 1,000 miles per hour in space, not that fast.
Right.
But he has to be traveling faster than that to leave.
Well,
yeah, but there's also like gravity. Like once you're close enough to Earth just pulls you back in. So you don't have to like. It's not like Earth is running away from you at 1,000 miles per hour and you have to catch up to it.
Yeah.
Like you just have to get into its orbit and then the gravity does the rest. Which that to me it's why the question of how do Kryptonians fly is interesting because is it like. Is he able to negate gravity? Is he pushing a force out behind him that's accelerating him?
Because otherwise, he wouldn't have to have escape velocity if he did that.
Right.
Interesting.
A buddy of mine, a physicist, theoretical physicist, Ben Tippett, did a grand unified theory of Superman's powers a while back, and he posits that if Superman could control the momentum and the moment of inertia of his own atoms and atoms nearby, he could basically create all of the different powers that we see that way. So it's possible he's just not subject to the laws of inertia and momentum.
If I may.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm glad that you're on for this because I really enjoy having these conversations with you because you are learned. However, at the same time, I would like to speculate, and you being here really puts a crimp on that because you immediately like, no, it's not right.
No, go ahead. I'll shut up.
I'm looking at a blog. I Googled how fast does Superman fly while you were talking. Uh-huh. I'm looking at a blog that has a scan from Flash, Volume 2, number 220. So this has been pre-New 52. That states Superman moves at over 2,000 miles a second.
Okay. Well, that's not... Okay, that doesn't seem...
Which is 7,200,000 miles per hour. Mach 9350.
Okay. Well... So that puts into question, he's often been sort of neck and neck with the Flash on things, and the Flash can move speed of light, which is a lot more than that.
Right, well, that was always the joke was that, and that was what Jeff Johns established, that the Flash was letting him win in those races.
Right. That's fair. Now, I was thinking that Superman, I think that Ryan's on to something.
That was for Charity Clark.
He's like a Dr. Manhattan, like he's basically defying physics however he does it, or like in The Expanse... what's the name of the aliens? The protomolecule.
Yeah.
When it takes the planet and it defies inertia and gravity and all the sort of rules of physics, but when it takes Eros station over to Venus, like it's that kind of thing. However, because he is more or less, we'll say more or less human in the way that he
was raised to think like a
things.
human. Yeah.
Exactly. So the way that he flies around is conceived in such a way that works like our, aeronautics, like a bird or like whatever, where it sort of flies around and moves in that way. But in reality, what's happening is he's just shaping his reality to do those things, but the mechanism is the other.
Which, like, it explains some of the quirks in the way that, like, he saves people. So if you think about Lois falling off the Daily Planet building and he swoops in to save her, he's hitting her faster than she's falling. Like, she should be obliterated by Superman, not the street. So that, part of the, and also when he catches stuff, he often doesn't dip. Like it's as if no mass has been added to him. So it's almost like he's controlling well, maybe you do, but the way comics are drawn, he often doesn't appear to dip. I guess in the movies and the cartoons, sometimes he does. But part of that also hints at this idea that like if he can shape the momentum and the inertia of things around him, that's also like how can he lift up a building without the building falling apart around him? Well, he's holding it together in some other way. And that other way might be moving its center of gravity to be right above his hand as opposed to where it actually is, in the center of mass.
You know what Grant Morrison would say?
It's magic.
It's comics.
Yeah. But it's fun. Fun to talk
this
about.
part is fun because there is no answer, so it's fun to sort of imagine what it is, as opposed to going, it wouldn't work like that. That's different than what we're doing.
In that sense, the true answer to Rashaad's question, how fast does Superman fly? As fast as the story needs him to.
Yes.
That is the true answer.
Yes.
And also the fact that like no one's thinking about that, because the second that you put
it falls apart.
It does, but also like it's fun to put up it is fun to build an imaginary construct around that and rules.
It doesn't make good for good storytelling to have these conversations, but it's part of the fandom to have these conversations
Sure.
just
Yes.
because it's fun. I think one of my favorite moments of Superman's discussing his ability to fly is a Nightwing comic, I think in the Chuck Dixon era, where Nightwing's hanging out on some building and then Superman appears and Nightwing just goes, so is that like walking or running to you to just be like hovering in the air like that? And Superman goes like, I don't know, it's flying. And I was just like, that's all I need. Like, he's just got some different muscle that he flexes, and that's what makes him fly. And we don't have that muscle because we're not Kryptonians, or gland or organ or whatever. And to him, it just feels like a thing he can push harder on, and it makes him go faster.
You know what's interesting? I listened to this whole like audiobook series on the science of sci-fi. That was really fascinating. I learned a lot of things. But he only moves in 3 dimensions, ever. The Flash seems to move in 4 dimensions. So Superman never... I didn't understand that the fastest anything could actually move was the speed of light. I didn't know that. There's not such thing as faster than light unless you're talking about that.
It's the universal speed limit.
Yeah, and I love that. And I like to think I was thinking and all of the things that I had ever read or before had all come together in one, and I was like, oh, and like literally the next day my wife goes, hey, what's a tesseract? And I was like, well, I'm glad you asked. And I was very like I was thrilled.
Was she glad?
I mean, she was initially, and then
quickly,
probably a few minutes in. And also, let's understand, I have a base level knowledge of any of this at best, and so the longer I go on, the worse it gets. But I do find it fascinating.
There's a physicist that I like named Sean M. Carroll, who's written a number of sort of pop press books on physics and quantum and cosmology. He has one called From Eternity to Here, The Quest for the Ultimate Theory of Time. And like one of the major fundamental premises of the book is like, why don't we remember events in the future? Because, you know, we can remember something to the left of me and something to the right of me, but I can only remember what's happened in the past. I can't remember. And like you start reading this book and you're just like, oh my God, this is Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
Like that's the only thing he's broken is this rule of like he can remember the future even though it hasn't quote unquote happened yet.
That's the thing that's the most impressive about Alan Moore, because you think, did he do a lot of reading to get to that, or did he think of it? Alan Moore seems like he was really ahead of the game in that sort of thinking when he came up with Dr. Manhattan and the tachyons and all of that stuff.
Drugs, I guess.
Anyway, the thing I was talking about is an Audible original. It's called The Science of Sci-Fi by Aaron McDonald, and it blew. I loved it. I was.
I will send either of you the link to the Unified Theory of Superman's Powers, which is a free PDF if anyone wants to check that out.
Cool.
Contact at iFanboy.com. That's where you can write in, like Rashaad, and ask us about science questions, and we'll hold them for when Ryan comes on the show.
Because otherwise it just gets ugly.
Let's do some quick plugs. So some shows have come out recently. The Animation Brain Trust show, where Ryan and I and Paul talked about Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. And then Josh talked with Kelly Thompson in his Talksplode show. And our Booksplode just came out this past week. Jack Kirby's New Gods. It finally came out after all that talk. And next we're going to do Pluto Volume 1. We decided. Haven't done manga, I don't think, ever on a Booksplode. Or maybe we have. There's been a lot of them. But we're going to do Pluto Volume 1 next. That'll be in 2 months. And the good news is...
Did Akira. Some of it.
We did, but it wasn't us. It was Paul and Scotty Young. Anyway, we're actually on schedule. We thought we were behind. We've been talking for a while like we were behind. We were going to have to owe you extra shows. But here we are, month 6 of the year. We've done 3 Booksplodes and 3 Talksplodes. So we just had put them out in a weird order, which made us think in the back of our heads that we were behind. But actually, we are on schedule for those shows. So that's good.
And also, if I can just put in one more plug for that Kelly Thompson show, I don't know, perhaps maybe if you're thinking, oh, I don't really read a lot of books or whatever, it was a great conversation in terms of like, I think her and I talking about a lot of the things that are going on in comics with the diversity of creators and what that means and representation and like, you know, how she's experienced. I really dug that conversation, much in the same way that when I had Brian, what's his name?
Lee O'Malley.
No.
Hill.
Kayvon.
Brian Hill. When I had Brian Hill on, I had a really good conversation with him like that too, which I think gets to a lot of the stuff that people are talking about in the zeitgeist of comics. I really love that show, and I just want to make sure that people don't skip over it. Cool. And then soon, speaking of shows that you should or shouldn't skip over, our Media Explode number 3, you asked for it by donating to Patreon, and then we gave it to you by choosing what we were going to talk about. We are going to talk about That Thing You Do. And the reason that we're talking about that is not because we're constantly trapped in the past. It's that I happened to put it on one night recently. I hadn't seen it in forever, and I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And the two guys that I know real well, Ron and Conor, they love that movie and they talked about it. So it was on our mind. It was in the zeitgeist a little bit for us. So we did that. We're going to talk about the other stuff we've been streaming. And
we were meant to record that this week. We just didn't do it. We're going to have to do that soon because we only have one more week left in the month. So that should be coming pretty quickly.
Did we just forget?
We were starting to talk about it. People don't need to hear this. We started talking about it, and we just forgot to sort of nail it down, and the week was over. The conversation got derailed, and something happened, and you and I did the Booksplode. Anyway, that's what happened.
Ryan?
I do a podcast called Science Sort of. Speaking of physics and cosmology, we had Sean Carroll on to talk about his book, The Big Picture, in episode 243, and we talked about the grand unified theory of Superman's powers in episode 9. Before I had a decent microphone, I'm sorry. ScienceSorter.com.
Head over to iFanboy.com. You can find all those podcasts except for the Science Sort of Show. You can find what the pick of the week is before the show comes out by liking Facebook.com/iFanboy, following at iFanboy on Twitter, or at Fanboy Comics on Instagram, which also has the Best of the Week in Panels feature. And individually, we are CS Kilpatrick on Instagram, J. Flanagan on Twitter and Instagram, Haupt, Haupt on Twitter, and Ryan Haupt on Instagram. And as we've been telling you, we have our YouTube page, which we've had forever, but we're finally updating with all those shows that we unlocked the patrons. YouTube.com/iFanboy. For all the old show uploads. This week we had a mini show about Absolute Editions. We had a spotlight on Robert Kirkman, and we had our look at 52. Mm-hmm. It's all from 13 years ago.
Now, how did the 1 year later work again? Do we have time to get into this?
Oh, God. You'd have to be around for a long time to get that joke. And I don't want to explain it because I want it to be special for the people who did, how all 8 of you. That's a thing.
You're my
if
8
you like
favorites.
This show, if you'd like to write a review, some of those reviews are very old, so maybe you could go in there and put some more contemporary reviews and just be like, I don't know what they're talking about, and they really didn't like this thing, and where I was promised a bird. Write a review, leave a star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're aggregating podcasts. Better yet, the direct method totally works. If you want to tell people about it who like it, or you mention it on social media, we always love that. Everything okay over on Twitter, Ryan? Is it?
Josh is out.
No,
Josh
no,
is out.
it's not. It's not okay.
You know what I did? I had done it where I deactivated before, but with Twitter, you have to put it back on in 30 days or you lose it. So I just changed my password to some ridiculous, random shit, and I just... not having to reset it is enough to keep me away from it. So that's been working pretty well for me.
Jamie McKelvey is retweeting about small police departments in West Virginia getting giant tank-like vehicles. It's all going crazy. Nothing's
now's not the time.
Away.
It's not gonna help me. That's all. That's our show. Thank you so much for coming, Ryan. Always a pleasure. I'm sorry it's been so long.
Oh, thanks for having me. And yeah, I actually fell off comics during quarantine, so this was a good chance to get back in the game.
Well,
understandable.
There you go. Thanks for coming. And until next week, we'll be back. I'm Conor.
I'm Josh.
Oh, I'm Ryan. I'm also here.
Take care of the other humans around you. It's really important.
We are all in this together, and no one gets out alive.